Yeah, this is the kind of thing that happens when I get bored on a weeknight whilst searching for more pastas to read. So, it is with greatest pride and deepest pleasure that I present 3 CrappyPastas. Death is a Funny Thing, The Origin of Eyeless Jack, and The Supermarket Monster. Death is a funny thing. One day, a boy named Charlie Wackerweed was making a wish on a star. He did not know that the wish he would be making would change his life forever. It was late one night, when Charlie was looking at the stars. He had heard that if you wish on the first star you see, your wish will become true. So he spotted the first star that he saw, and he made a wish on it. His wish was that whatever he said or did, for it to come true. So, for instance, if he would say, "Let it snow," it would snow. Just a few days later, he was sitting in his geometry class, wondering about the test they would have in about 5 minutes. When he got the test, he sat there, wishing that he would ace the test. He took the test that was supposed to be very hard, and he thought it was easy. He got it back, and it was an A+. He was amazed, because he had never had a test and aced it before, and this test was probably the hardest one that he had ever taken. He asked all his classmates what they had gotten on the test, and they all replied, a C+ or lower. Charlie was very excited that he had gotten a better grade than Chris, who was an A+ student, and Chris had made a C-. There was this one kid that Charlie did not like. He wished that something bad would happen to him. The very next day he was out of school. Charlie asked his teacher where he was. He said, "He is in the hospital with a very deadly disease. It came on him so fast, and none of the doctors have a cure. It is really weird. I have never seen anything like it." The very next day, Charlie heard that the kid with the deadly disease had died. Charlie was upset about the whole situation. He knew that it was his fault that he had died, so he went to his funeral with sorrow and regret. He was at home, alone, late one night. All of a sudden, the phone rang. He ran down the steps to answer it, thinking that it might be his parents. He picked up the phone, and he heard the dial tone. He thought to himself, "That's weird." And then he went back up to his room, thinking no more about it. This happened several more times, and he still ignored it. Then, all of a sudden, the doorbell rang. He went down to answer it, again thinking that it might be his best friend, Jard. He opened the door and said, "Hey, Jard, what's—" But then he noticed that no one was there. He thought to himself, it must be those little kids that live down the street prank-calling and ringing the doorbell and running. So he then went back up the stairs to his room, thinking no more of it. Then there was a peck on the window. He was really starting to get kind of scared and curious. He went to the window, opened it, and yelled, "Get out of here, you little kids!" But still he saw no one. Since it was starting to get really freaky, he decided to go and watch some TV. He flipped on the TV, and right then the power went out. He knew that the kids couldn't have done something like that, because he didn't have a fuse box. He now realized that the kids couldn't have done any of the other things now, and he was starting to get really scared. He went and got a flashlight, and he saw red eyes across the room, and was coming very fast towards him. He all of a sudden heard a low, creepy, but familiar voice calling, "Charlie! Charlie! Charlie! How could you do something like this to me?" Charlie replied, "Who are you? What do you want from me? I have no clue what you're talking about." The voice replied, "You do know what I'm talking about, Charlie Wackerweed." All of a sudden, it jumped out behind the shadows, and Charlie saw a beaten, flesh-removed kid that Charlie recognized as the kid he had wished that something bad would happen to. His eyes were blood red, and the flesh that he had left was purple and blue. Charlie was scared to death. He told the kid that he had never meant for him to be killed or even hurt, but he didn't believe him. The kid replied, "Now it is your turn to follow the pain and death that I had suffered through." Then the kid took Charlie out of his house and tied him up to a tree. The kid then dug a huge hole and then untied Charlie. The ghost said to him, "I'm sorry that it has to end this way, Charlie, but this is what you have to repay me by doing. Goodbye, Charlie." Then the kid threw Charlie in the hole and buried him alive. No one really knew what had happened to Charlie Wackerweed, until one day a clipping all of a sudden appeared in the newspaper, telling what had happened, and who had actually killed the kid that Charlie didn't like. I am telling you now, be careful what you wish for, because it just might come true. This is not a true story. Or maybe it is. The origin of Eyeless Jack.
It was any normal day at 5 a.m. I was waiting for the bus to deliver me to such given location right when it showed up. Alas, I didn't recognise the driver, for our normal driver was homesick. I proceeded to board the bus. As I climbed up the steps, a kid asked me to look at him. I ignore him, pulling a hoodie over my head and proceeding to my seat. I fall hard, realising he tripped me. I mutter, "You'll regret that," then stand to walk to my seat. As I sit, the kid asks, "What do you mean I'll regret it?" I laugh and then proceed to say, "You'll see." "Shut up, freak," he replies. I ignore him and stare out of the window as our bus begins to move. Not 20 feet later, there's a loud crashing noise and a piercing thrust. My head goes through the window, the glass through my eyes. I swiftly pull the shattered glass out of my eye sockets, right then and there. I'm staring at my eyes on a piece of glass. I couldn't explain it. How could I? I turn to see the same kid that tripped me on my way to my seat. He screams in disgust at me. I get a weird feeling, one of which I can't explain. A feeling I just wanted to hurt. I knew it wouldn't heal my pain, but it just seemed the most rational solution. I threw the glass to his eye, causing him to scream louder than everyone on the bus. I take my backpack off and stand, but I feel a sharp pain in my lower back, my kidneys. This pain comes from my father, John. He smoked cigarettes since I was 14, and I have dealt with second-hand smoke till last year, when he died. Apparently he was killed in his sleep with a knife, and everyone said the cigs would kill him first. I felt anger and pain, and I rushed the driver. Just then, I feel my lower back in even more pain. I turn to see a fellow student has pulled a pocket knife on me. A collector's edition Swiss gear, silver with studs. I quickly disarm the student holding the knife to his throat Don't make this too easy for me. In fact, I'll give you a 10-second head start, I say, deeply smiling. As he gets up to run, I stab him in the gut and whisper in his ear, I lied. I grin with an evil feeling much greater than the one I had before. I feel blood on my back and scream, That was my kidney! I jump on his cold body, violently ripping his flesh apart with my hands. I had biology, so I knew exactly which organ was the kidney. The students look at me, screaming in disgust as I pull his kidneys out of his grisly, demolished body. Don't you like kidneys? I began to eat it when I hear sirens. I put back the half-eaten kidney and then pry open the bus doors. I see the backwoods and proceed to head for them. I begin to run, sprint to an extent of which I have never done before. As I reach the backwoods, I stand behind a tree, staring at the wreck. I feel something cold and slippery wrap around my mouth. Something tentacle-like. It pulls me back, and in a panic I proceed to pull out the Swiss gear my peer had stabbed me with. I raise it to cut the tentacle, when I see a figure much clearly now. It had a white head, no eyes, no nothing, but a bump of which seemed to have previously held a nose. It was wearing the same suit my cousin wore before he went missing years ago. I drop the knife, and he removes his tentacle from my mouth. I stand to say, Stephen, is that you? He turns and vanishes, not speaking a word. I feel disgusted of myself. I wish to cry, but nothing comes out. Just the sound of my sobs of self-pity. I grab the Swiss and begin to cut my lips. Once they're off, I think to stitch them. But then this thought dawns on me. It'll leave a scar. I want no one to remember Jack. And I decide to let it heal on its own. I walk into the woods, surviving, alone, never to meet society again. Months later, I decide to eat. Something that appeals to me. A kidney. That would suffice. It was all I knew. All I had. Not even my own cousin would help me. I slip into his house and find my first victim. I stare at him for a while before I strike. Unfortunately, he wakes up. I rush out of the window, thinking to myself, darn, this is going to take some practice.
The Supermarket Monster.
Once in a place far away, a very long time ago, there was an boy named Roger. He was tall but a bit round. He lived in a big city where unusual things seemed to happen every day. For example, his uncle died. Anyway, Roger had lots of enemies in the city. All the people he used to like were now his enemies because he changed. He used to be a really successful banker named Ron, but he decided to go another way, and now he is a hobo named Roger. Because of this, his friends thought they didn't like him anymore, so they said, "You're our enemy now." And Roger was like,
Oh no, I have no friends, but loads of enemies.
Roger lives day by tomorrow. By the change he gets off strangers outside McDonald's, but sometimes when he gets enough money, he goes to the local shopping centre called Teco. He can only buy things when they are on sale, so he only buys things when they are on sale because he doesn't have any much money. Sometimes he even gets enough change to buy chicken when it's on sale, and he goes into KFC and says,
Can you cook this for me?
And they do it because they are his enemies and they spit in the food. Yuck. Today, the most windy and stormy and rainy and cloudy and sad of days, he decided he needed to eat and went to Techo. When he went inside, there was no baskets. This was weird. Roger thought he must have been giving them a break today, so he kept going. He saw that 3 bread was on sale, so he was going to buy it. And then an big fat hairy man ran up to him and said, "No, that's not for you." And he took the sale sign away, so which made the bread go back up for $100,000. This is all in the future, so that's normal for the future. Roger made a face similar to the D face, and he said,
"But if you don't give me that, I'll starve."
And the fat man laughed, and his fat went bouncy from laughing. Then one of Ron's enemies died, so Ron felt his anger rising. That happens when his enemies die. And he punched the man so hard that his fat fell off, and the man was so angry that he cried blood. Then the lights went out so fast that Roger knew he was going to be murdered. A black mist came out of the cereal boxes, and the bacon was flying everywhere. Pancake mix splashing over the counters, freezers freezing at higher temperature than normal, so that it was freezing the frozen pizzazas too much. Ron ran far away to the aisle that was always full of people. It has like loads of sweets and crisps. Yummy. There was like 15 monsters there, all black with eyes oozing with blood and tears that looked like bacon, but were actually dead people's skin. He screamed, "Fat man, help!" But when the fat man came he said, "You punched my fat, and now you will pay. I am your enemy." And then he ran and went inside a freezer, but forgot that the freezers froze too hard now, and he died from freeze. Roger ran to a exit, and was almost out when he trippied on something. He looked down and saw his enemy saying, "Help me, the pancakes were too string." And then he said,
"No, I am Roger. You were Ron's friend, not mine, Smelly."
And he ran out the door. He was safe. He got out. He escaped. He avoided death. He was alive. He was tall. He was safe. He was Roger. Then he went back for the bread, but forgot about the monsters. So when he got the bread, the monsters came out between the slices and cried blood from their mouths, saying, "We are your enemies, Ron," he said.
"How do you know my old name?"
And then they ate him, and he fell down on the floor, crying from death. His last words were,
"I am all your enemies."
Then he fell down and died. Just before he died, he said,
"I will now be a supermarket monster."
So when you are in the supermarket, remember that Ron is waiting. In the future, though, because it's in the future, remember?